Transgender is now such a fashionable topic, but of course it goes beyond just talk. In Victoria especially, there's been a huge jump in children referred to treatment to change their gender, 41% last year, 41%. And girls as young as 9 reportedly given puberty blocker drugs, boys 11 years old. In the United States, surgery for women wanting to be men has tripled in 3 years to nearly 7,000 patients last year. Now, Peter Benjamin has had sex change surgery too. He's British, he's 60, he's an ex-soldier, and started cross-dressing as a teenager. And in 2015, a few years after his wife died, he had gender reassignment surgery to become a woman. But not long after that surgery, Peter Benjamin started to have panic attacks, drinking heavily, and after several years as a woman, decided to be a man again. He joins me now from London. Peter Benjamin, thank you so much for your time. I know this is a tough story for you, but tell me, what made you decide you were really a woman?
Good morning, Andrew. I didn't really decide that I was really a woman. It just came. I was suffering with anxiety and depression. I was drinking heavily, and I was cross-dressing, wearing women's clothes, going out socially and stuff like that, and driving around, spending a lot of time as a woman. And it was after my wife died, I decided I want to be a woman full time. So I went to my doctor, and she told me to go away and live as a woman for a month, which I did, without any hormones, without any treatment or anything. And then after that, I was referred to my local psychiatrist, a registrar psychiatrist, who said I had no underlying medical conditions in his report, because I read it, but I did. I was alcohol, depression, anxiety. And so then I was referred on to the Gender Identity Clinic in London, but because the waiting list was so long, there were so many on the bandwagon to change gender, I decided to go private. But all through this process, I was looking on the internet, I was getting advice, I was getting information off the internet, of looking on different websites and stuff like that on transgender, how you go about the operation, what happens, and reading the press, how many people were going through the operations and everything. And I was keeping up to date with it all. And there was blogs on social medias at the time saying about transgender, what the waiting list is, about the hospitals and everything. So I was getting caught up in this vicious circle of following this transgender. I'm not weak-willed. And so I went to London. I went to the Gender Identity Clinic. No, I went to see the doctor privately, the psychiatrist, and I paid a lot of money to see him for an hour. And he said, yes, you've got gender dysphoria. And he prescribed me hormones. Then I saw the same doctor again under the NHS. I saw him twice. And then I saw the endocrinologist for my medication. I saw him as well through the NHS. But before I went to the doctor, I was buying my hormones online. But I don't know what these tablets contained, and I was taking loads of them, copious amounts of these hormones. And I don't know what they were doing to my body. They could have killed me. And then the doctor prescribed hormones, and I had to have regular blood tests and everything. 2014 came, and I saw another psychiatrist, and he referred me on for surgery. But all this time, I was also receiving transgender counselling for a transgender support group. And my counsellor said to me, you are a woman. That's what he kept on saying to me, you are a woman. And even before surgery, he said, you are a woman. And this was instilled in us through the support groups.
Peter, there doesn't seem in the process you're describing that in this process, there doesn't seem to be many steps where people were really saying to you, now listen, Peter, think about this really, really seriously. This is a very serious process, and maybe you aren't what you think, won't be getting out of this what you think you might. It seems to be fairly smooth to point of surgery.
I had to go do the real life test for 2 years between seeing the first doctor and seeing the last doctor, seeing him again. So I had to go and do the real life test. But there was no, through that real life test, there was no backup from the NHS whatsoever. That I was on my own out there. There was nothing, no one talking me out of it, nothing. I just lived my life as a woman for 2 years. It was difficult. There was a lot of abuse and everything else. But I lived my life like that. And then
did it improve as you had hoped? When you got your surgery and you changed it, how was your life then?
Yeah. My anxiety was, it was top. It was still high. I was scared to go out the house. I did go out. I went out socially and stuff, but I was on antidepressants. I was still on the anxiety tablets, and I was still drinking heavily. I had to drink to get the confidence to go out, to get out the house, and this carried on right the way through until I changed back to being Peter, and I'm now on all medication. My doctor. I don't need it anymore.
Well, well, that bit's good. I mean, what made you change back?
When I was out one day in my local shopping centre, and a lady, I go to church, I'm a Christian. I was out in my local shopping centre, and a lady who I barely know from my old church came up to me and said to me, "Who's Peter?" This was a divine appointment, and I haven't seen her since. And she said, "Who's Peter?" And I said, "Peter used to be me." And she said, "God doesn't want you to be Victoria." And I said to her, "I know, I've been hearing God's voice as well. I don't hear voices. This was real." So I went home and I sat down, packed all my stuff and got rid of it all. And I was going to a new church at the time, and I went to a meal that Saturday night at church, and two ladies who I don't know said to me, "Where's your hair?" So I told them the story, and I told my pastor, and they told me, and other churches where I go to prayer meetings, etc., they all said they'd been praying for me. No one told me that they'd been praying for me, but they'd been praying for me. And I've just gone from there, gone from strength to strength. I say I'm off all my medication now. I walk daily with God, and I just feel so great now, Andrew. So
I'm so glad so glad you found some peace there. But gee, you might have spared yourself a lot of trauma along the way if someone had maybe spoken to you a bit earlier. But Peter Benjamin's a fascinating story, yes. And those that want to follow it should look up your name on the internet, Peter Benjamin. They will see your story written in a number of papers. And I thank you very much for coming on the show.